Nuclear power is the most dangerous and disastrous power in the world right now. Every country wants to have a nuclear weapon of its own, and hundreds of scientists are working on it every single day. However, since it's a very complex process, not everyone can develop a nuclear asset. But wait, what if I said that a 17-year-old boy built a nuclear reactor in his mom's backyard, only with the basic household items available? Yes, I am talking about David Hahn, widely popular as the radioactive Boy Scout. Join us today as we look at the journey of David Hahn and how his mission to build a nuclear reactor was achieved. So, Hahn was born on October 30th, 1976 in Royal Oak, Michigan, a city located just outside of downtown Detroit. His father, Ken Hahn, was a mechanical engineer and basically worked around the area. Speaking of his mother, Patty Hahn, she suffered from alcoholism and was diagnosed with depression and schizophrenia in a mental hospital when David was only 4 years old. The poor kid hardly got the mother's love, something we all deserved. Unfortunately, David's parents got divorced when he was just 9 years old and his father won his custody. Since then, David grew up with his father, stepmother, and stepsister. The young kid would spend most of his time living at his dad's and stepmom's house and going over to his biological mom Patty's house during the weeks as well. When David turned 10, his grandfather, Patty's dad, gave him a completely harmless birthday gift that would completely change the course of life for David and be the start of the upcoming chain of events that the whole world would remember. The gift was a book titled The Golden Book of Chemistry Experiments. Basically, it included various chemistry experiments for kids and guided them to hone their creativity and practical knowledge. And no wonder David got obsessed with it almost instantly. With the help of the book, David started collecting different elements from his surroundings and understanding them in order to know more. He even set up a small laboratory in his room at his dad's house where he performed his experiments. One day, David learned how to create chloroform in his experiments. However, he was still a kid, right? So, since it was mentioned in the book, he sniffed the chemical which made him unconscious for more than an hour. But this was not his first or even his last act that caused him danger. At the age of 14, when most of the kids are playing with toys or creating little baking soda volcanoes, David has fabricated nitroglycerin. Not just that, there is another story to tell you about how selfless or careless, whatever the right word is, David was with his body. So, David was a scout in the Boy Scouts of America, and one day, he turned up to the scouts' camping trip with a bright orange face that looked horrible. When asked, he claimed that it was the result of an overdose of canthaxanthin, which he was taking to test methods for artificial tanning. I wouldn't be wrong to say that he did not care about his body at all. His mom and dad would hear the sound of small explosions and fireworks from his room all the time. Sometimes, they also found chemical pills lying beside his pillow, but didn't consider it important to confront him. All they did was move their kid's laboratory from his room down to the basement as they were tired of him destroying the house and pockmarking the walls and spilling chemicals on the carpet. What his parents thought was a good punishment for David, shifting his laboratory down to the basement, turned out to be the complete opposite. Now, David simply had no one to interrupt him during his experiments, and he got more space and privacy too. As a result, he started conducting even more dangerous experiments on his own, without caring about the consequences. He would even do a variety of after-school jobs just to make more money to fund his experiments and get more elements he could mess with within his laboratory. But what he was about to do was not gonna settle, even in that spacious basement. One day, he got hold of a lot of red phosphorus, which is basically match heads. He put all that in a glass container and started hammering it with a screwdriver. And guess what? It blasted. The blast was so fatal that he injured his arms and hands badly, and even had to get the glass piece that he was using removed from his eyes because, of course, he wasn't wearing any gloves or goggles. Now, with such a fatal accident, you'd think that his parents would have broken the chemistry kit and asked him strictly to put his focus elsewhere, but hell no. He simply moved his lab to his biological mother's backyard, the place where the big thing was gonna happen. However, his mother's boyfriend Michael did ask him what he was up to. Replying to this, David said, "You know, one day we're gonna run out of oil." And that was it. No clear explanation of what he was really doing there. Looking at all of this, David's dad finally realized that his son needed to shift his obsessive work ethic towards something more useful. And that is how David joined the Eagle Scouts. An Eagle Scout needs to earn 21 merit badges across different disciplines, some of which are mandatory, but the rest depends on the Scout's choices. As an Eagle Scout, you can earn a badge in business, farming, fishing, and so on. But David, nah, he wasn't interested in any of these. He thought of earning a badge in atomic energy, and surprisingly, No one took the trouble to ask him why he did so, even if he was the only scout in a long history to do so. David collected several pamphlets from different utility companies in order to earn the merit badge. The collective gist of the information collected was that nuclear energy was good, it was vital and needed to be studied more. To show the goodness of nuclear, he also made a chart explaining nuclear fission and even made a harmless toy model nuclear reactor using basic stuff like juice cans, coat hangers, soda straws, kitchen matches, and a rubber band. This gave him the opportunity to visit a hospital's radiology department and learn more about how they use radioactive isotopes. And with all this, David finally received his atomic energy merit badge on the 10th of May 1991, just a few months before turning 15. But David wasn't content with all of this. He thought the toy model nuclear reactor was just a waste of time, and if he had to achieve something, he would need to make an actual radioactive nuclear reactor in his mom's shed, which he ultimately did as well. But it wasn't a day's deed. In order to start his work on the breeder reactor, David needed thorough information about radioactive elements and how they worked. So, David pretended to be a senior college professor and wrote letters and made phone calls to places like the NRC, the American Nuclear Society, the Edison Electric Institute, and so on. And guess what? No one cared to double-check and verify his identity. In the end, a senior rep from a nuclear agency basically walked David through the whole process of obtaining and isolating radioactive isotopes. Now, David had all the information he wanted to get started on his own radioactive nuclear reactor, but he'd need to get the elements first, right? So, he started creating his own nuclear breeder, also referred to as a nuclear reactor by many, by collecting small amounts of radioactive elements from his local stuff, such as americium from smoke detectors, thorium from camping lantern mantles, radium from clocks, and tritium from gun sights. But this small quantity wasn't gonna help him create what he wanted. It would take a lot more amount than he had at that time. So, he called a gas smoke company, identifying himself as a college professor, and demanded 100 smoke detectors, saying it was for a college project. Again, no one cared to verify his identity and shipped all the 100 pieces. Similarly, he got hold of a decent amount of uranium from a different place, because why not? This was the story of David freaking Hahn, man. With his continuous obsession with chemistry and his luck that no one asked him any questions regarding his work, David now had a fully functional and highly dangerous radioactive nuclear reactor at his mom's backyard, and no one had any idea. With time growing, the radiation level of David's little reactor was growing rapidly. David realized that the radiation was too much and that he would be putting other people at risk when he detected the radiation of his reactor far from his neighbor's doors. As a responsible person, he decided what every other pro would do in that situation: to dismantle the reactor. He started putting all the parts of the reactor into the trunk of his Pontiac, but before he could shift the stuff from his mom's backyard, his neighbors called the police since they thought he was stealing car tires, and the police arrived at the scene at 2:20 a.m. on 30th August 1994. When the police started searching his car, he warned the cops saying it's radioactive, which the cops didn't like much. They thought Hahn was in possession of an atomic bomb, and so a bomb squad was called and everyone was delighted to know he didn't have any bomb with him. However, the police did measure 1,000 times more radiation than they should have measured. Finally, some adults were stepping into the matter, kind of. Initially, David was arrested for possessing radioactive elements without having proper authority, but still, no one cared to look at his lab and what he was doing there. The NRC finally looked at his lab but didn't do anything. Why? Because it was out of their jurisdiction. It wasn't until 5 months after David was arrested that the EPA showed up at his lab and decided that his lab posed an imminent endangerment to public health, welfare, and the environment. To protect the nearby areas and its population, the ETA dismantled his lab into pieces, sealed it up into bits, and then dumped all the things in a dump in the middle of Salt Lake. In an assessment, it was known that Hahn's nuclear reactor had affected more than 40,000 people with extremely dangerous cancer-causing levels of radiation. All this just because of his obsession with chemistry. Hahn was sent for medical treatment at a mental hospital by the court for his irresponsible and dangerous obsession with chemistry and atomic energy. Later, on September 27, 2016, at the age of 36, Hahn died in his hometown of Michigan due to excessive use of alcohol, fentanyl, and diphenhydramine. But with himself, Hahn left a very important lesson for all of us to learn. The lesson is that sometimes everything is chaos and even the most able people cannot do anything. Another lesson is for the parents or guardians out there. Watch your kids and know what they're up to. Maybe they don't realize what they're doing right now, but you do. Make sure that they're on the right track. David Hahn could have been one of the greatest scientists of all time, maybe if his parents cared a bit more. With that, we'll end the video here. Thanks for watching, and I hope you've learned something valuable from here. If yes, subscribe to the channel. We keep bringing such videos. See you later.